What a way to start the season for the Chicago Bulls after kind of a damper leading up to the game that Zach Lavine was going to be out of the lineup, which, if you guys caught my video from earlier today, I'm really not happy with how that whole communication went down and why at the first game of the season he's getting quote-unquote injury management. Never seen that before, but we're not going to harp on that. The Bulls just won their first game of the season and did so against a good team on the road in pretty convincing fashion, so let's talk about it. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. If you're new to the channel and you're a Bulls fan, be sure to subscribe as I'll be following the Bulls all season long. That way you don't miss an episode. I also just started an NBA channel, so if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link to that in the description. It is called N1 Hoops. But anyway, this was actually a great game. I wasn't really sure what to expect from the Bulls after it was announced that Lavine was going to be missing the game, being on the road in Miami, a team they have never played well against. They got swept by the Heat last season, and based on how the game started, the Bulls fell early and looked pretty sloppy on both ends. I figured we were going to be in for a long night, but no, the Bulls turned things around, competed well in the second quarter. They still weren't shooting the ball well in that quarter, like at all, and they were giving the Heat everything from behind the arc, a team that was the best three-point shooting team last season. But the Bulls came out in the second half on fire in that third quarter with a monster showing from DeMar DeRozan, who I'll get to. The Bulls finally ended up taking the lead in the third and actually pulled ahead by double digits going into the fourth. Got a little scary there in the fourth when the Heat started making a run with the Bulls' second unit. I personally think Billy waited a little too long before bringing the starters back, but once DeMar got back into the game, the Bulls never looked back, held on to the lead, and came away with a great team win, which is important because a lot of the Bulls' wins last year, you couldn't really say that they were team wins, at least in the second half of the season anyway. Now, I'll start with a few things that jumped out to me, and it actually really starts with the in-game adjustments that were made, specifically in the second half. You know, for the criticisms that we give Billy Donovan, he actually made great in-game adjustments going into the locker room at halftime. And I really mean that as it relates to the Bulls' perimeter defense, because the Heat were absolutely torching the Bulls from deep, giving them way too many looks with enough space that you know their guys are going to hit. And in the second half, the Heat went ice cold from three. Now, some of that is the Heat just not hitting their shots, but the Bulls defense stepped up big time in sticking with guys on the perimeter, specifically Kyle Lowry, who was awful tonight, and Tyler Hero. You have to know going into a game against the Miami Heat that you're going to have the floor spaced a ton, and you can't get too caught up on Jimmy Butler driving to the basket or a lob to Bam Adebayo. It's tempting to double team those guys when they're doing that, especially as their two best players, but that leaves guys like Hero, Strus, Robinson, Vincent wide open for a three, and they'll hit those at a high clip. So great in-game adjustment on the perimeter defense, otherwise Bulls likely don't walk away with a win in this one. The other thing I'll say, Vucevic didn't necessarily have the best game from a shooting perspective, kind of went back to his regular season form after having such a great shooting preseason, but what he did do incredibly well was rebounding. 17 rebounds in total, and very impressive in terms of his offensive rebounding, which he struggled with last season. Getting those second chance points was key for the Bulls, and they capitalized on that when last season they were one of the worst teams in the league in terms of second chance opportunities and points scored. The other thing is Vucevic actually played really well against Bam Adebayo, who Vooch has historically struggled against. Bam really struggled on offense tonight in the paint, and a lot of it was Vooch deterring him getting to the basket. Bam had 5 turnovers tonight, was 5 for 15 from the field. Vooch finished the game with 15 points, 5 for 13 shooting, 1 for 5 from 3. Still needs to work on that outside shot, although that one that he made was a very big one in the fourth quarter. But 17 rebounds and 3 blocks from Vooch was great to see him really getting out there early and attacking the basket. Also, how about Dosunmu? In his first start, replacing Lonzo Ball, steps up in a big way on both ends of the floor, was controlling the pace and flow of offense, was getting after guys on the perimeter on defense, especially in the second half. He was plus 15 tonight. Finished the game with 17 points on 50% shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. I mean, you talk about a guy who needed to step up with Lonzo being out for the foreseeable future. And then on top of that, also Lavine being out for tonight's game. So you need his offensive production, both in terms of scoring and playmaking, and he delivered on that tonight. Was very happy from what I saw from Ayo and hope it's only just the beginning in terms of his ascent going into his second season. But man, this game was all about DeMar DeRozan. Didn't have the best first half, but boy, when you needed DeMar in the clutch, when you needed a guy to take over, he was there. Even the scoring aside, which he went off tonight, putting up 37 points on 14 for 22 shooting, even shot 2 for 3 from 3. He was the floor general out there with Lonzo and Lavine out. racking up 9 assists and doing so on only 1 turnover. I mean, DeMar is usually a higher turnover guy with his usage, but he was great at taking care of the ball tonight, and he had active hands on defense, getting a couple steals when the Bulls needed it. DeMar also finished the game with 6 rebounds. I mean, more importantly, when the Heat started making that mini run in the fourth, I think they cut the lead to 1 possession at one point. They bring DeMar in, and everything just settled down from there. That's what you want in your team leader. That's what you want from your star player. You love to see it. Who says the guy couldn't do it again this season? Year 14, he still got it. Oh, and I almost forgot Dragic tonight, who seemed pretty intent on playing hard against his former team. Dude was hustling, making smart plays, and then decided to go off from 3. He went 4 for 4 from deep in the first half. Ended up finishing the game with 12 points. Was very productive and solid off the bench. Another guy I thought had a nice game, although his shooting could have been a little better, but he picked it up in the second half, hitting some big shots and finished the game with 10 points. That was Coby White. 2 for 7 from deep. Would like to see that improve though. Now, I want to say this as delicately as possible because I feel so many Bulls fans are writing this kid off, but yeah, not a good game from Patrick Williams. Look, it's more than just the empty stat sheet. It's more than just the lack of aggression on offense that we always talk about. It's the fact that he almost looks lost out there when he's on the court. Like, I made a point tonight to watch Patrick when he was playing off the ball, because obviously it's easy to get focused when you're watching a game on what's happening on the ball. But in watching him play, just following him wherever he went, no matter where the ball was, there were legitimately times where he didn't know where he needed to be, or just standing around and not moving on offense. Like, you always need to be active and moving on offense, especially if the ball handler is getting trapped. You wouldn't even see that from Patrick. And look, I get it. It's the first game of his 3rd year. He's only 21, just turned 21 actually. I'm not going to go nuts on the guy like I've seen a lot of Bulls fans say that he's a bust, trade him ASAP, what a fail of a draft pick that was. No, I'm still going to give the guy this whole season to see how he does. But so far, yeah, not looking good. 4 points, 2 rebounds in 28 minutes, a -4, the only starter with a negative box plus minus tonight. Just doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence in this kid. Alex Caruso was also decent tonight, being inserted into the starting lineup in Lavine's absence. Not a good shooting night, didn't seem like he could really knock down much of anything. 2 for 10 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, but he was still active and all over the place on defense, and was another guy that stepped it up big time in that point of attack on the perimeter that allowed the Heat to go so cold from deep in the second half. I will say, I was pretty disappointed Billy Donovan didn't give any playing time to Dalen Terry. I mean, in the second half, when things are going well, I get it, you don't want to mess up rotations, but in the first half, when the Bulls were a little lethargic and needed a little boost of energy, it would have been good to get Terry in there and see what he can do. But at the same time, I'm also not that surprised. As I've said before, I don't see Terry cracking the rotation on most nights in his rookie season. But Lavine being out, I was hoping they would give him a shot for a little bit. But anyway, a great first win. Bulls are off tomorrow before they take on the Wizards on Friday in DC. Then they'll head back home in a back-to-back game against the Cavs to close out the week. I'll have live game chats for those. Again, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. And as always, guys, until next time.